What you are about to hear will challenge everything you think you know about creative inspiration and the terrifying price some people are willing to pay for it. I stared at the classified advertisement, wondering if my fever-addled mind was playing tricks on me. The text was simple yet disturbing. Someone wanted to deliberately contract a virus from a verified sick person with recent medical documentation. They were offering $500 for 8 hours of close proximity exposure, regardless of whether infection occurred. The email address followed this bizarre request, and I found myself considering something I never thought possible. I had been unemployed for 3 months after my workplace closed due to financial difficulties. The unemployment benefits barely covered my mounting bills and living expenses. Getting sick had completely derailed my job search efforts, leaving me desperate for any source of income. $500 for simply allowing a stranger into my home for 8 hours seemed like an answered prayer. I contacted the mysterious person immediately, and they agreed to visit that very evening with cash in hand. We arranged for them to arrive at 6 p.m. since I preferred evening hours due to my night owl tendencies. The knock came at exactly 5:58, dragging me from my feverish stupor to answer the door. I expected to encounter some kind of eccentric individual or someone with unusual fetishes about illness. Instead, I was greeted by a well-dressed professional, appearing to be in his mid-30s. He wore expensive black slacks and a crisp button-down shirt without any protective mask. His brown hair was neatly trimmed, and square gold glasses gave him the appearance of a successful banker. He extended his hand for a handshake, something no one had done during my entire illness period. From his pocket, he produced an envelope containing money and showed me 5 crisp $100 bills. I led him into my living room, where he settled into my armchair, leaning forward with intense focus. If you are finding this story as fascinating as I did, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification, because supporting the channel gives us the strength to bring you more incredible true stories like this one. And don't forget to check the description link for our exciting channel giveaway contest happening right now. I collapsed back onto my couch and asked him what we should do next. He simply shrugged and told me to continue my normal activities like watching television or playing video games. His plan was that close proximity would be sufficient for disease transmission and help him achieve his mysterious goal. I questioned why anyone would deliberately want to contract such a debilitating illness that was known for severe symptoms. He chuckled and admitted his reasoning would sound completely insane if he explained it. Having nothing better to do for the next 8 hours, I encouraged him to share his story. His eyes wandered to my bookshelf, scanning the titles as if searching for something specific. He stood up and retrieved a particular paperback novel from the middle shelf. The book was relatively new, titled Fields Are Foregone, and he nodded approvingly while examining the spine. He seemed pleased with what he discovered, because he smiled and offered to sign the book for me. He revealed that he was actually the author of my book, and explained that his writing was directly connected to his presence here. I squinted at him in disbelief, realizing he might be Timothy Corvin, the famous writer of the Ghostgrass series. He confirmed his identity as a 3-time New York Times bestseller, leaving me speechless for several seconds. I demanded to know why a successful author was in my apartment desperately trying to contract a dangerous virus. His smile turned sad and distant as he explained that his writing career was indeed the reason for his unusual visit. He made himself comfortable and began telling me the strangest story I had ever heard in my entire life. 1 month ago, he had contracted the virus and initially experienced typical flu-like symptoms, including cough, and fever. He assured his literary agent that the illness would not interfere with his deadline for completing his latest novel. The first few days were manageable, allowing him to remain lucid and continue making progress on his writing. He was making excellent progress when the severe symptoms suddenly struck with full force. Suddenly he became feverish and scatterbrained, unable to focus long enough to perform basic daily activities. His days were spent in a medicated stupor, barely coherent and heavily reliant on cold medicine. His nights consisted of restless sleep, filled with vivid dreams that blurred the line between reality and imagination. He experienced these mysterious dreams that he could not recall clearly, but felt compelled to remember constantly. He would sit on his couch mumbling about these visions all day, trying to understand their meaning. I raised an eyebrow, commenting that his condition sounded terrible and probably prevented him from accomplishing much work. He surprised me by saying quite the contrary had occurred during his illness period. The longer he raved about the mysterious story, the more he found himself compelled to write about it. His notes from that period resembled drunken ramblings more than coherent writing. But something was happening. At some point, he began chronicling the visions in a more organized fashion. He would regain consciousness at his computer, frantically typing stories without remembering how long he had been working. The stories were exceptionally good, but completely different from his usual writing style. His incoherent brain could not fully comprehend what he was creating during these episodes. As his fever intensified, he would slip into fugue states and write continuously for hours. One day, he emerged from such a state to find an email from his agent waiting in his inbox. He had apparently sent her a draft manuscript during one of his fever-induced writing sessions. He was extremely worried because these stories were bizarre and completely unlike his previous work. He feared his agent would drop him as a client after reading what his fever-addled mind had produced. He paused to sip some coffee, clearing his throat while my own feverish brain grew impatient with curiosity. I asked him directly what his agent's reaction had been to his unusual submission. She absolutely loved it, calling it the most unique and compelling writing she had read in years. She wanted to know when he would complete the full manuscript and was eager to see more. Reading through his fever-induced work after recovering, he could understand her enthusiastic response to the material. The writing was simultaneously familiar and completely different, like a timeless story existing outside normal creative processes. It featured two antagonists with no traditional hero, depicting a war with nothing but loss and incomprehensible stakes. The style was almost Lovecraftian in nature, and he found himself as interested in the outcome as his agent was. However, this is where the serious problems began to emerge in his creative process. He looked longingly at my glass of water, so I slid it across the coffee table toward him. If he wanted to get sick, he might as well get his money's worth from this expensive arrangement. He reached for the glass and brought it to his lips, his throat working as he swallowed the contaminated water. I tried not to gag at the thought of the germs he was deliberately consuming. The medication was suppressing his fever, and the fever was what maintained his altered state of consciousness. He was always careful not to ride the high for too long, but the intoxicating effect was undeniable. He would time travel in those moments, starting on his couch and regaining awareness at his computer. He had completed more pages during those sessions than ever before in his writing career. He reduced his medication dosage slightly, wanting to extend this incredibly productive period as long as possible. Eventually, his body began to recover naturally, and his fever started to subside. His fugue states became less frequent, and he could no longer access that hidden creative realm. The story was not something he could simply make up as he went along using his normal faculties. It was unknown and unheard of, and his regular mind could not tap into that primal source. His agent was desperate for more content, wanting an ending, and already discussing potential sequels. That is when he started seriously considering contracting the virus, again deliberately. I expressed disbelief that he would want to experience such a miserable illness again voluntarily. Between the headaches and constant fever, most people exist in a state of pure misery during infection. Some people experience even worse symptoms and require hospitalization, which could completely derail his writing plans. He shrugged and explained that even while experiencing the same symptoms, he still felt compelled to write. He did not know if it was subconscious or something else, but his brain took control and forced his body to write. Maybe it was not even his conscious mind, but rather the mysterious place he accessed during fugue states. He had contracted the virus 3 times now, which shocked me since most people rarely get it twice. After recovering the first time, he struggled to maintain the same quality and voice in his writing. He tried faking the style, but it was not the same, and his agent began to notice the difference. She started returning his submissions with notes requesting more of the voice from his earlier fever-induced drafts. He became increasingly desperate as the pressure mounted to recreate that unique creative state. His agent had shared his work with colleagues who were excited about how the final product would develop. He put the pieces together and decided he needed to recreate the situation that had produced his best work. I confirmed that he needed to get sick again deliberately, and he nodded in agreement. He started slowly, waiting in hospitals and seeking out sick people in public places. Eventually, he became desperate enough to take more direct action to achieve his goal. He got lucky the first time through a chance encounter at a sick friend's house. One visit to their apartment later, he was back where he started, feverish and coughing on his couch. I asked if the time skips and creative fugue states had returned during his second infection. He replied that he would not be running classified advertisements if they had not worked again. Something was different this time, though, and the experience was more intense than before. This time, he was treated to some of the most vivid dreams he had ever experienced in his life. He was not just hearing about his 2 antagonists and their exploits, but actually seeing and watching them. He observed them playing their shadow games, maneuvering pieces, capturing territory, and losing it again. All the while, he was chronicling their activities in his fever-induced writing sessions. It became a complete mania for him, and he refused to take any fever-reducing medication this time. After 1 week, his fevers were subsiding, and he was back to trying unsuccessfully to fake the style. He could not fake it, and would not even attempt to try anymore after experiencing the real thing. He needed the dreams, he needed the visions, he needed the writing fits that he never remembered experiencing. That is when he started running the classified advertisements to find willing infected people. The newspaper staff did not want to publish the ads, saying they were sick and inappropriate. Once he offered to pay triple the going rate for the advertisement space, they agreed to run it. As I watched him speak, I noticed he looked slightly sick, not physically but mentally disturbed. He resembled an addict describing his favorite drug with frightening intensity and obsession. As he talked, he scratched at his arm, his face taking on a disturbing, smiling expression while describing the visions. I began to wonder how the disease or story had affected his mental state and overall well-being. I wanted to tell him to leave for his own good, but I really needed the money he was offering. He had spent nearly $5,000 trying to contract the virus again through various methods. Every time he posted the advertisement, someone responded, but his body had developed antibodies over time. Each subsequent infection was less effective than the previous one due to his body's natural immunity. The last time he contracted it, he barely had it for 1 week and was anxious to maximize productivity. He did not think he got more than 30 pages out of that entire week of illness. I expressed amazement at 30 pages, which seemed like prolific output from a sick person to me. He called it disgraceful compared to his previous fever-induced writing productivity levels. The first time, he was averaging nearly 30 pages per day, but never managed that output again. I asked in disbelief if he was really producing that much content daily during his illness. His eyes glazed over as he stared at my popcorn ceiling, clearly not pleased with his declining productivity. He explained that he sees them constantly now, referring to his mysterious antagonists from the story. He simply cannot make sense of what he is seeing using his normal conscious mind. He cannot convey concepts like storms battling for supremacy or tectonic plates crashing against each other. The fugue states allowed him to tap into something primal that could understand these incomprehensible ideas. His puny lizard brain just cannot make anything coherent out of the visions on its own. Reading the things he had written, understanding only enough to be scared of what he had created. I asked how much of his book he had actually written, though I was not sure I wanted the answer. He scratched again, seeming uncomfortable, but still wanting to discuss his drug of choice. He had written 5 complete books, cataloging the lives of his 2 antagonists from birth to their final encounter. I gaped at him in absolute disbelief at the scope of what he was describing. He was talking about 5 books, completed in what must have been a matter of months. I could not even consider accomplishing something like that level of productivity under any circumstances. I began to wonder about the page volume and size of these books based on his daily output numbers. The productivity he described surely meant these were no small books, but substantial literary works. He did not seem to understand where these stories were coming from, making them even more mysterious and troubling. I asked if he could tell me about them, though part of me was beginning to regret my curiosity. He gave me a dead-eyed look that made me almost regret asking about the content of his work. He explained that it was not something people really want to know, and his agent had stopped returning emails. The last 2 attempts at infection were solely so he could learn how the story in humanity ends. Humanity itself was ultimately the prize that these 2 creatures fought over in their cosmic war. More specifically, they fought over the right to subjugate and entertain themselves with human beings. We see their battles as nothing but changing seasons, but they see them as nothing short of total war. He warned me that I would not want to know once he finished explaining the full scope of the story. I did not really want to know anymore, but now I felt compelled to understand what he had discovered. My curiosity was ultimately stronger than my growing fear of what I might learn. He spent the next 10 hours telling me about the battle between the Green Man and the Pale Lady. He described their strange beginnings, their emergence and exile, and how they came to exist on this plane. He told me about the Brandilo, servants of the Pale Lady, and the numerous agents of the Green Man. He explained how the Green Warrior was worshipped as a pagan deity, and how he demanded sacrifices from followers. It is funny how 10 hours can seem like 30 minutes when someone is describing eldritch deities to you. When my phone alarm went off reminding me to take my medication, I realized it was 6 a.m. Timothy got up, checking his phone, and seeming to realize that he had been talking all night. He acknowledged that he had gone over his time a little bit, but seemed unconcerned about it. He handed me the promised envelope as he prepared to leave my apartment. I dropped the envelope and shakily got up from the couch asking him how the story ends. He looked back and shrugged, saying hopefully he would find out eventually. He promised to let me know if he discovered the ending to his mysterious cosmic tale. Then he left my apartment, and I would not hear from him for another 3 months. I would never see him again, but he would eventually make good on his promise to contact me. I felt better by the end of the week, my fever breaking and my headaches gradually improving. I finally received a negative test result and started actively looking for work again. I got lucky when the bar up the road was hiring and needed someone to start immediately. They had recently been allowed to reopen, and the bartender was working double shifts without help. Before I knew it, I was busying tables and hauling crates at the local establishment. I enjoyed the work, even though it was something I had never done before in my career. It felt nice to get back to work after such a long and financially difficult absence. Then, one afternoon, I received a bit of a shock while helping my boss prepare for opening. I was turning on the televisions and preparing to tune them to various sports channels. I saw a news story that made me stop in the middle of flipping through channels. I caught it toward the end of the broadcast, and the name in the article made me freeze completely. The city mourned the death of local writer Timothy Corvin, who died of virus-related symptoms that morning. Mr. Corvin, writer of the Ghost Grass series, was survived by his father and older sister. Funeral services would be held on Tuesday for friends and family members only. I could not believe it. The man had been in my house not even 1 month ago. Had I killed him by allowing him to contract his fatal disease from me during his visit? I had to sit down because I did not know what to make of this devastating news. My boss noticed something was wrong and tried to send me home, thinking I had lingering fatigue. I told him I was fine, though, and went back to work despite my emotional turmoil. As I worked, I wondered if Timothy had discovered the ending he was so desperately seeking. I got my answer in the mail 2 months later when a mysterious package arrived. A package was waiting on my doorstep, even though I had not ordered anything recently. The return address was from Samantha Drummond, though the delivery address was definitely mine. I brought it inside and opened it to discover a manuscript bound with simple twine. There was no title across the surface of the hand-bound journal inside the package. On top of the journal was a typed note from Mrs. Drummond explaining the package's purpose. Her brother had requested that she send this to me if he should pass away from his illness. He was very adamant that the manuscript be placed into my care after his death. I lifted out the journal, opening to the front page, which bore a message written in shaky handwriting. I found the end. Let's hope it helps you after I'm gone, the note read. I have been sitting here looking at the book for close to 1 hour, unsure whether to read or burn it. If the beings Timothy talked about have been using his infected body as a mouthpiece, I am not sure I want to open my mind. This book contains the history, the past, present, and future, and this knowledge cost a human life. Will they come to infect me if I subject myself to this arcane and dangerous wisdom? That knowledge scares me more than a little as I put the journal back in its box. I have decided to put it in a closet for now, until I can decide what to do. Some things are better left unknown, at least for now.